you say that subsidy is not going to be the central of your the center for your policies, but on the one hand, on the other, you started off with free water, etc., which was correcting some sort of a systemic failure. So I'm very confused. If subsidy is not going to be central of what you're going to say, but on the other you're going to come out with free water and cheap, how are you going to do it? I'm very unclear about what this government is articulating on those fronts. It's very confused.
I can understand why we may not look clear. One of the reasons is that we have not yet fully spelled out our economic policy. But surely, giving subsidy, not giving subsidies, these cannot be ideologies. Every government all over the world subsidizes something or the other. The decision is which things do you want to subsidize and what do you not wish to subsidize. As of now, you have looked at one or two things. About water, I really would plead with everyone, supplying people drinking water must be priority, and all that we have done is actually cross-subsidization. And a subsidy did exist in Delhi on water. All we have done is to raise its bar and to introduce a principle of cross-subsidy, which is to say if you use more than 700, then you would pay at a higher rate, which would subsidize for others. What's wrong with that? On electricity, the subsidy that we have announced is only an interim relief, pending the inquiry of CAG audit. Let the audit come.
Okay,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so I want to go back to the question on FDI and also the point you made about not starting with ideology but evidence. So what really is the evidence that you say exists against FDI in retail? And if there is indeed, then why is it just against foreign retail? Why not Indian organized retail, right? What's the logic of allowing any organized retail if the evidence is employment reduces?
Let me say two things here. One is that according to central government, it is in FDI in retail that the state governments have a certain legal power. As you know, after a huge national debate, it was decided that FDI retail is a question on which each state government will be given discretion. We had discretion under this. We have taken a decision.
On what evidence have you based this decision?
Evidence? Evidence presented by a large number of retailers, and the danger posed to retail business that mom and pop shops all over the world, which have all over the world slightly sort of disappeared. In India, in Delhi's context, we thought that disappearing of that retail, would it mean benefits being passed on to consumers, or would it mean greater profit for those big firms which would come in? We have to balance the two. We looked at that, and I'm again saying, this is not an in-principle decision as yet about FDI in retail or about retail sector as a whole. This is one specific measure for Delhi, and we still are in the process of developing our economic policy. As I said to her, we have not yet developed our full economic policy. If you say, are we learning? Yes, we are learning.
Before I move on from economic policies, I want to do 2 rounds of shows of hands, okay? Firstly, would you be comfortable with the idea of government getting back into electricity distribution in India?
Rahul, this is an unfair question. No? This is not what we have said.
If it were to happen, can we ask it, or you think it's unfair?
Rahul, can I pose a fair question?
Yes, you ask a fair question.
This is such a distorted way of asking.
You tell me what question to ask.
The question is, if 2 of the companies are not doing what is written in their contract, should they not be threatened with termination of their contract?
Okay, but as an extension
new contract
of that,
be brought if necessary.
Are people okay with government getting back into power distribution?
This is not what we have said at all. I mean, you can ask other kinds of questions if you want.
Kejriwal said that? Kejriwal said that. He said it in the interview. He said, I did an interview with him.
Allow me to say exactly. You can also say whether Kejriwal's father should distribute Bijli for Delhi or not.
No, but he told us in an interview.
But what Aam Aadmi Party has said is this, that if these regulators blackmail and threaten us, we would take it back and then take the decision. The decision could be many things. The decision could be we would run it ourselves. The decision could be we could outsource it to someone else. The decision could be we would bring a new contractor.
Okay, so let me ask both questions.
All these options are open.
Let me ask both questions. First, let's take the question Professor Yogendra Yadav suggests. If the private companies do not live up to their contract and, as Professor Yadav says, blackmail and threaten the government, Is it okay for Kejriwal's government to cancel that contract? Those who say yes, put up your hands. So you believe that if the contract is not being honored by the private companies, it should be terminated. That's your response? Okay. Let me now, and I think that's a majority of people who actually said that. The second question, would you be comfortable if Kejriwal and the Delhi government gets into the business of distributing electricity themselves instead of relying on private operators? How many, just show of hands for those who say no.
No, we will not.
So all of them say no. So I think you said that there are other alternatives as well. You'll have to explore those. Sure. This is a Mohalla Sabha. This is almost like a Mohalla Sabha which you've been talking about.